Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. Look, if you're a focused learner trying to wrap your head around the absolute cutting edge of cloud-native architecture, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're unpacking a monumental leap in backend infrastructure. We're talking about the May 6, 2026 public beta of the @supabase/server package. And let me tell you, this isn't just some minor version bump. It is a definitive shift. We are moving from simple Postgres-as-a-service into a highly mature, heavily scalable ecosystem that's literally built from the ground up for edge computing and AI-driven development.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this scenario. It's the terrifying reality of scaling up inside a NoSQL vendor prison. This case study highlights a company that was doing great, right? They hit 10 million users. But because of how their database scaled, their monthly bill exploded from around $1,200 to a staggering 30 grand a month, just for being successful. Today, we're going to explore exactly how this new Supabase server framework acts as the ultimate escape hatch from that exact nightmare, giving developers not just incredible performance, but true architectural sovereignty. So here's our roadmap for the breakdown. We're going to cover the stateless backend era, their new security-first defaults, how scaling works with multigrass, the integration of AI agents via the Model Context Protocol, and finally, we'll crunch the numbers on the economics of sovereignty. I promise you, by the end of this, we'll see exactly how this release solves some of the most annoying daily friction points developers face. All right, Section 1, the stateless backend era. Let's start with a massive, universal headache for developers: the sheer, soul-crushing redundancy of server-side boilerplate. Enter a completely new higher-order function called withSupabase. Now, for years, if you were using edge functions, you had to maintain all these custom utility files, usually named something generic like a shared supabase.ts file. It was super tedious. Well, this single function abstracts all of that entirely away. It automatically intercepts your incoming request, validates the authentication, and handles the manual JSON Web Token, or JWT, verification, all before your core logic even runs. It's a real game changer. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this pre-configured context injects declarative, stateless request handling straight into your workflow. The second you use the wrapper, you instantly get access to ctx.supabase. That's a client perfectly bound to whoever is making the request, and it automatically respects row-level security, or RLS. Need to do some heavy lifting with elevated privileges? Boom, you use ctx.supabaseAdmin. And honestly, the best part? ctx.userClaims gives you the decoded user identity instantly. You don't have to waste time on a costly round trip to the database just to figure out who's talking to your API. And check out how this naturally builds into their new declarative auth modes. You can now tell the system exactly who is allowed to access an endpoint without writing a bunch of messy, error-prone guard clauses yourself. Whether you're setting up a standard user endpoint, a secret one for your internal microservices, or an always-open endpoint for something like public health checks, this declarative approach drastically cuts down the risk of data leaks. Because, let's face it, misconfiguration in serverless environments happens all the time. Moving right along to Section 2, Security First, Default Deny. Okay, I really want to emphasize the urgency here. Supabase has made a massive, fundamental shift in their default security posture. They are moving completely away from the old permissive by default model. Walk through this timeline with me. Historically, if you created a table in the public schema, it was just immediately queryable via the APIs unless you explicitly remember to lock it down. Well, as of May 30th, 2026, that era is over. The new default requires explicit Postgres grant statements before an API can even see that the table exists. This is a brilliant layer of defense and depth. If you miss a grant, Postgres just flat out rejects the query at the engine level. No more worrying about vulnerabilities from a misconfigured row-level security policy. And take note, by October 30th, this strict enforcement becomes mandatory across all legacy projects too. Along with that, we're seeing a full transition over to modern API keys. The old anon and service role keys, they're actually being phased out entirely by the end of 2026. The new keys, SB Publishable and SB Secret, are built specifically for the modern edge. What's super cool here is that the new @supabase/server package just handles the internal key resolution automatically. So you get zero downtime key rotation and asymmetric JWT verification right out of the box without needing to wrestle with external crypto libraries.
All right, Section 3, Scaling, Replicas to Multigres.
Look, all this security means literally nothing if your database just falls over the second you get a spike in traffic. As an application scales up from a basic MVP to true enterprise grade, developers now have very precise tools to handle different read and write ratios. Got a write-heavy workload? Simple. You just scale up your compute, all the way up to a beefy 16XL instance. But if your traffic is, say, over 80% reads, you can distribute that load across read replicas, which you can even place globally to kill latency. And for those with massive scale write distribution needs, Supabase now offers multigress, which uses Vitis to horizontally shard your Postgres database. So, the crucial point is how you actually manage the massive concurrency that comes with serverless scaling. Enter Supervisor. It is a cloud-native Postgres connection pooler that can handle literally millions of connections. Usually, serverless edge functions easily overwhelm databases by opening way too many simultaneous connections. It's what we call the classic hug of death. But by transitioning Supervisor to transaction mode by default in May 2026, it completely solves this connection bottleneck. It keeps your database healthy no matter how many edge functions fire off at the exact same time.
Section 4. AI Agencies and the Model Context Protocol. Now let's talk about the wild world of vibe coding, where AI basically acts as your junior developer, on call 24/7. Supabase now heavily integrates with the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, allowing AIs like Claude or Cursor to talk directly to your database. Fun fact, during internal testing, Claude flawlessly migrated entire projects over to the new framework. But giving an AI direct access to your database is kind of terrifying without guardrails, right? Nobody wants an AI accidentally dropping production tables. That's why they've instituted some incredibly strict safety protocols. We're talking environment isolation, keeping the AI in staging, enforcing read-only modes, locking it down via project scoping, and using database branching so the AI can test schema changes without ever touching your live production data. To lock things down even further, they've created a really vital separation of powers. On one hand, you have the official MCP server. Think of this as high-level administrative control, running migrations, managing projects, that kind of thing. On the other hand, you have the Postgres MCP server, which is strictly for interacting with your data. And crucially, it forces the AI to respect row-level security exactly like a standard user would. This ensures that a less trusted AI environment can never accidentally expose your sensitive production data. Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 5, the economics of sovereignty. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about, because all of these architectural choices ultimately tie right back to your financial reality and project ownership. Let's revisit that opening case study to see the real-world impact of your tech choices. A document NoSQL database like Firebase Firestore, which notoriously charges you per read and per write, resulted in an eye-watering $30,000 monthly bill at 10 million users. Meanwhile, Supabase, because it uses optimized relational queries and a compute-based pricing model, handled that exact same workload for about $599 a month. I mean, the difference is just staggering. Plus, back in August 2024, Supabase made this huge economic shift to granular hourly billing for their add-ons. Take the 7-day point-in-time recovery, for example. It used to be a flat $100 a month. Now, it's roughly 13 cents an hour. This means you only pay for those high availability features exactly when you're actually using them. If your dev team only needs point-in-time recovery active during a stressful 2-day database migration, you literally only pay for those 48 hours. It vastly reduces your day-to-day operational costs. But hey, cost savings aren't the only benefit here. True sovereignty, that comes from having the ultimate escape hatch, the ability to self-host. If you ever decide you need to leave their managed platform, you can just spin up the entire Supabase stack yourself via Docker Compose. As long as your hardware meets these basic specs, we're talking at least 4 to 8 gigs of RAM, a decent multi-core CPU, and solid SSD storage, you can run this entire architecture on your own bare metal servers, no questions asked. So, let's sum up why smart capital and top-tier engineers are absolutely flocking to this model in 2026. Proprietary solutions often hit you with opaque per-read pricing, and they completely lock you into their specific infrastructure. Supabase, on the other hand, gives you the exact same buttery smooth developer experience of a backend as a service, but because it relies on standard relational Postgres tooling, you are always guaranteed a self-hostable escape hatch. You actually own your stock. Which leaves us with this final, genuinely critical question to ask yourself today. Are you building your future in a vendor prison, or do you have true architectural sovereignty over your stack? The 2026 Supabase server beta proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that you do not have to sacrifice a great developer experience just to own your code and your data. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep building, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.